2 weeks and we'll pick up the conversation. In a couple weeks, we're going to talk about Psalms of Lament, which I'm looking forward to. We're going to spend a couple weeks on that. But for today, I want to go through two different types of psalms. So last week, we talked about psalms of praise and how this needs to be our basic heart posture towards God is praise. And we talked about how often, God is here and we're here, and we just sort of naturally kind of move like this. And praise just rights the ship again, puts us in the right spot. So this week, we're going to try to go through two in the next half hour or so. And so if you have your Bibles, that's good. Have them out. We're going to be reading lots of Psalms. If you need one, there's a chair at the back with a bunch of Bibles on it. So this morning we are going to, any comments or questions, I should say, first of all, from last week, or things that you've been reading in the Psalms this week that you wanted to share or ask? Good. Okay. Let's keep going. We are going to look at Psalms of confidence. Psalms of confidence. Because of who God is, and because God knows me, I will be okay. That's the essence of Psalms of confidence. Because of who God is, and because God knows me, because I'm with him, I'm going to be okay. There's a lot of these Psalms. And so I want to take a look at them, how God's presence with us and God's character overshadows all the other stuff in our life that might make us not confident or might make us fearful or afraid. So probably the most well-known psalm of confidence is Psalm 23. Can anybody stand up and recite Psalm 23 by heart? You don't even have to stand up. I used to, but I can't anymore. Anybody know Psalm 23 by heart? All right. What? Julia knows it? Do you think you can do it out loud for us? I'm sorry for putting you on the spot, Julia. I really didn't need to do that. But way to go. This is a psalm of confidence, Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, and because he is, I will be okay. And here's what it means for God to be our shepherd. Because the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. That's still kind of old language, right? We don't talk that way. Other translations, I have everything I need. That's confidence. He makes me lie down in green pastures. I'm relaxing on a grassy hill because God's with me. He leads me in paths of righteousness, even though, and there'll be other psalms like this, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, even though there's bad stuff in my life, I will fear no evil because God's with me. That's confidence. You're with me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Just sitting down and having a good steak dinner while your enemies watch you. That's confidence. It's all good. God's my shepherd. I don't have to worry about my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. That's blessing. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. It's going to be good because God's with me. And I'm going to live in God's house forever. So that's a psalm of confidence. Because, and it uses the image of a shepherd. Remember we talked, there's lots of this imagery in the Psalms. Because God is my shepherd, because I'm one of his sheep, it's all going to be okay. Now, obviously, this is not to say that you won't face hard stuff in your life. Even this psalmist, this is David, he's walking through the valley of the shadow of death. So it's all roses and rainbows and lollipops. But because I have to go through there, because God's with me, I'm going to be okay. Psalm 23. Let's look at another one. Psalm 46. Flip over to that. How about I'll get two people to read Psalm 46. Somebody can do 1 to 7, and someone can do 8 to 11. That way you don't have to read so long. Who can do 1 to 7? Put your hand up. What, do I see one there? Martha? And who can do 8 to 11? David. Okay, read these out nice and loud. Psalm 46. Good. So this is another psalm of real confidence. Begins with God's our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble, which is kind of a familiar verse lots of us know. And then it goes through all the bad stuff that can happen. And this is all big imagery. Even though the mountains might fall into the sea. That'd be something to see the Rocky Mountains fall into the Pacific Ocean. Even though the waters roar and foam, even though the mountains tremble at its swelling, there's a river whose streams make glad the city of God. God's in the midst of her, she will not be moved. There's a real confidence. Even though all this bad stuff can happen, God's our fortress. Can't move him. I think of that, I don't know, for some reason I just think of like, a big tough guy and a little kid coming and throwing a body check at him, and you just don't move, right? That's the confidence of being with God and God being with us. And the nations rage and the kingdoms totter. This is politics. The nations are at war with each other. All kinds of stuff's going on. And he utters his voice and the earth melts. That's confidence. This nation can fight that nation. The world is falling apart. And God speaks and the earth melts. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. And I like that. This is a very familiar verse 10. Be still and know that I am God. You can only be still if you're confident. If you're not confident, you're fretting, you're worrying, you're looking, this nation's fighting that nation, our world's falling apart, what's going to happen? Oh no. But the Psalms of confidence say, because of who God is, because God knows me, I'll be okay. Even though the nations are fighting, even though the mountains are falling into the sea, I can be still and know that I am God. The Lord of hosts is with us. The God of Jacob is our fortress. Do you like these Psalms of confidence? Thoughts? Comments so far on either of these? I bet it is, but I'd have to check. I know there's one coming up that's going to use that exact word. It probably is, yep. Let's go to Psalm 56. I'm going to read a couple of these. I keep forgetting to read the first line. I said we need to do that. To the choir master, according to the dove on the far-off terebinths. We don't know what that means. It's probably a musical. This is the tune that you're supposed to sing this psalm to, the dove of the far-off terebinths. A miktam of David, and we don't know what a miktam is either. It's probably a musical term. When the Philistines seized him in Gath. So this is a time when, you remember David got taken by the Philistines and he pretends to be mad. There's another psalm that comes out of all of that. So this is a time when he's a prisoner, Okay? This is a psalm written by a prisoner. Be gracious to me, O God, for man tramples on me all day long, an attacker oppresses me. That makes sense if you're a prisoner that you'd start off your psalm that way. My enemies trample on me all day long, for many attack me proudly. That makes sense. And listen to 3 and 4. When I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. In God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can flesh do to me? That's the line that gets me. What can these people do to me? He's a prisoner. He's a political prisoner there's no Geneva Convention or anything like that in this world. You're a prisoner, they can do whatever you want. And he says, what can they do to me? Skip down to verses 8 to 11. You have kept count of my tossings. You put my tears in your bottle. You get that picture? God's keeping David's tears. He's catching them off his cheek. He's keeping them in a bottle. Are they not in your book? Then my enemies will turn back in the day when I call. This I know. Does this not sound like confidence? That God is for me. In God, whose word I praise, in the Lord, whose word I praise, in God I trust, I shall not be afraid. What can man do to me? Well, I'll tell you, David, you're a prisoner. They can torture you and saw you in half and kill you. And David knows all that, but God's in his corner. What's the big deal? What can you do to me? This is confidence that borders on the line of cockiness. You know that schoolyard bully who pushes the little kid down and says, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to me? That's David to his enemies. What can you guys do to me? My God is the one true God. Real confidence in the midst of being in a horrible situation, being a political prisoner. If you have thoughts or comments, just shout them out. I won't always ask. But let's keep going. Psalm 91. More confidence. It's a long one. I'll read this. This is what I spoke on last Sunday at the lodge. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. So here's the confidence. He will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his feathers, and under his wings you will find refuge. So right off the bat, God is pictured as a big, strong stone fortress in verse 2. And then in verse 4, he's a bird, covering his little ones in the nest with his wings. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in darkness. Interesting as we've come through a time of pestilence and plague for this psalm. Nor the destruction that wastes at noonday. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand, but it will not come near you. You will only look with your eyes and see the recompense of the wicked. Because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge. No evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder, the young lion and the serpent. You will trample underfoot. There's Genesis 3. Because he holds fast to me in love, I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. So I think it would be a mistake to read this psalm and say, oh, if God's on my side, nothing bad will ever happen. I'll never get the plague that's going around or whatever kind of trouble. There'll still be trouble that comes your way. In fact, he says, I will be with him in trouble. But I will rescue him and honor him. With long life I'll satisfy him and show him my salvation. So, again, this picture of 1,000 people may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand. God's going to be with us. There's confidence. That's where the rubber meets the road, right? They would say, that's not my experience. The plague has come near my tent. I have gone through this. And this one's not a psalm of David, but it very easily could be. The amazing thing is that often the people who write these things are the people who have been through all of that stuff. It's not the ones sitting in a nice office, a nice theologian writing a nice thing about how God is always with us. These are people who have been through that awful stuff. So I think, that's the question I wrestled with too in the last couple of weeks looking at this one is, but sometimes the plague does come near your tent. Sometimes you do get COVID. Sometimes you do die. Like, this stuff does happen. But maybe it's a difference between what happens to my body, what happens to my circumstances, compared to what happens to my heart. And maybe there is, that plague will not come near your heart. And maybe I'm stretching, I don't know. But there is a difference. I mean, you watch people who walk with God go through lousy situations in life, and they walk through that much differently than people who don't have God in their life. So whatever that looks like, and I know there's people in this room who could speak to that, who have gone through hard stuff or are currently going through hard stuff, and yet God is with them in that trouble. Doesn't mean the trouble doesn't come, but yeah, I don't know. There's not easy answers. That's a very good question, Richard. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is what Satan quotes to Jesus in the desert. He quotes Psalm 91. Yeah, we could talk lots. Mm-hmm. Make sure you make that connection. Thanks for bringing that, Sandy. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I think you're right, David. The psalmists are credible because they've been through this. They've been through trouble. They walked through the valley of the shadow of death, and God's been with them. Yeah, in the back. Oh, sure. Yep. Yeah, I mean, we can classify these all different kinds of ways, but you could definitely call it a psalm of protection for sure. And we're confident because we're protected. Maybe that's the way you could say it. Let's look at a few others. Psalm 118. We won't read all of this one. Let me read a little bit of this. Starting in verse 5. Out of my distress I called on the Lord. The Lord answered me and set me free. The Lord is on my side. I will not fear. What can man do to me? You just get what are you going to do to me? The Lord's on my side. I'm not going to be afraid. The Lord is on my side as my helper. And that's that word, Jared. That's that. My powerful ally is Yahweh. The creator of the universe is on my team. Why am I going to be afraid of anything? The Lord is on my side as my helper. I shall look in triumph on those who hate me. It's better to trust or to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man. Better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in princes. All nations surround me. In the name of the Lord, I cut them off. They surrounded me on every side. In the name of Yahweh, I cut them off. They surrounded me like bees. They went out like a fire among thorns or in a canola field. In the name of the Lord, I cut them off. I was pushed hard so that I was falling, but the Lord helped me. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. Glad songs of salvation are in the tents of the righteous. The right hand of the Lord does valiantly. The right hand of the Lord exalts. The right hand of the Lord does valiantly. I shall not die, but I shall live and recount the deeds of the Lord. The Lord has disciplined me severely, but he has not given me over to death. Open to me the gates of righteousness, that I may enter through them and give thanks to the Lord. See the confidence? We don't know who wrote this psalm. God's with me. What am I going to be afraid of? People attack me on every side. I cut them off. Psalm 121. I got to keep up with my... Can somebody read this psalm out? It's just 8 short verses long. Another psalm of confidence. Yeah, that's another psalm of protection. Sorry, I forgot your name in the back. Give me your name again. Yeah, right. These are psalms of protection, and we're confident because God's protecting us. He's our keeper. He's going to shelter us from the sun, from the moon. He'll keep us from all evil. He'll keep our life. So there's lots of these. Psalm 16, 27, 49, 62, 73, 125. Lots of these psalms. Yahweh's on my side. Why should I be afraid? There's real confidence. So what value are these psalms to us? These are good psalms to have when you go through hard times. This is a locker room speech from God to rally the troops, to get in a position for victory. Anybody fans of the Lord of the Rings movies? Not many of you. There's this great scene. There's this big battle, and there's all these horsemen all lined up. And it's awesome. They've all got their swords out, and they're ready to fight. And the army that they're going to fight is way bigger and way more powerful than them. And so this is at the very end of this whole 9-hour or 12-hour long movie thing. And Aragorn, he's the leader. And he says, there may be a day when the hearts of men fail, but it will not be today. And there may be a day when we crumble and fade and fall away, but it won't be today. And he takes his sword and he rides along and he clanks all their swords. That's this idea of we're going to go into this with confidence. And sometimes we need that in our life. Sometimes we are facing stuff where we need to just be reminded of who God is and the fact God knows me and He's with me. He's my powerful ally. And if I really get a grasp of that, what am I going to be afraid of? I will be afraid of whatever is bigger and more powerful than God. That's what I'll be afraid of, which is nothing. So I like these Psalms. Sometimes we need to read these Psalms to other people. There might be someone who is going through a battle in their life, and maybe your call is to bring one of these Psalms to that person in a sensitive way. We can do this in an insensitive way. Don't worry, God's got you. It's all going to be okay. But there's a way we can do this in wisdom and love to people to say, this is what it means for God to be with you as you go through this hard thing that you're facing in your life. Or maybe someone's going off on the mission field, or kids going off to school. Whatever it is, these Psalms of confidence are important. So give me your thoughts. How can we use these Psalms? How can we pray these Psalms or sing these Psalms of confidence?
I agree with what you said, but there's still a fine line in who's going to present that psalm to me. If I've been through a major event in my life,
Yeah.
and somebody comes along and presents a psalm like that to me,
Yep.
who's never experienced that, that's tough to take. And that's what Job experienced.
Sure, yeah. And that's why we're not getting our confidence from the person delivering that psalm, but from the God that the psalm is talking about, maybe. But yeah, sometimes you will get someone who's been through what you've gone through, what you're going through, and that's going to help. But sometimes there's nobody on earth who's going through what you're going through.
It seems to me that a lot of it is
Yeah.
our battles might look really big in me, but to the next person it means nothing. So to me, it's more like an emotional or it's a mental thing that's happening, and that's where our confidence kind of rises up when it's a mental battle.
Yeah. And I think I've used this example once before, but like in coaching an athlete, if I have two athletes of the exact same skill level, one is super confident and one has no confidence, I want the confident one on my team. He's going to play way better than the unconfident one, even though their skill exactly the same. So yeah, our confidence level is going to affect how we walk our Christian life in a big way. Other thoughts on any of these Psalms that we read this morning? Yeah. 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 Yeah, so maybe if the Psalms of praise are about getting us to look up and to praise God, maybe the Psalms of confidence are getting us to look beside us and realize, oh, God's with me. Like he's here with me too. He's up there, but he's with me. Yeah, Sandy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. 'Cause that's good. Our flesh is in battle with our soul. No, I get what you're saying. And keeping flesh in perspective. And that's what Psalms do. And yeah, even if this body is broken and sawn in two, it's just the flesh. Yeah. Yeah. It can have as much power as you give it. And that's it. Yeah. I'm debating what to do. We got 10 minutes. Can we jump in, totally shift gears, or do you want to talk about this more? Erica. Oh, like being afraid of heights and or something like that? Yeah. That's a good question. I've never thought about that. Is fear a God-given thing? I mean, we know the most common command in all of Scripture is do not be afraid. Yet, if you've got your 6-year-old walking down the highway, maybe a little bit of fear is good in their life. I don't know. What are your thoughts on is fear a good, is it ever a good thing or a healthy thing? Trying to find the lips that are moving from the voice that I hear. Yeah, I see you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think fear is an emotion. Our emotions are God-given. I guess it's what we do with that fear. Was it Psalm 46? Oh. Sure, and that's exactly where I was going. Maybe it's Psalm 50. It's one of them I just read. When I am afraid, I will put my trust in you, is what it says. So, yeah, you've got fear. What are you going to do with that fear? Are you going to sit on that fear and let it destroy you, let it keep you from relationships, let it keep you from whatever God's called you to do? Or are you going to say, okay, God, I'm terrified right now, but I will trust in you? And I think that's what the Psalms of confidence do. Because you're going to be afraid. You're a human being. I think we're going to have fear. What do we do with that fear? Courtney? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. That's good. Yep. Yeah. Go ahead, Sandy. Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah. 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 Yeah, you're right. That's a good verse to bring in. He's not given us a spirit of fear. Yeah. Yeah, and when the fear, yeah, when it's consumed us, we've lost sight of all of these Psalms. We are not thinking about God as our powerful ally. We are not thinking that the creator of the universe is on my side. Because if I'm thinking of that, I'm not going to be afraid. But I forget that all the time. Yeah, yeah. So I think these Psalms are, we would be wise to come back to these Psalms regular, these Psalms of confidence, especially when we're feeling not confident, especially when we're feeling afraid. Take a list of these Psalms and say, okay, I got to immerse myself for 10 minutes in Psalms of confidence. I got to remind myself, the Lord is on my side. What can man do to me? I think that will change how we go about business, how we go about relationships, how we go about stuff with our kids. Yeah, these are valuable. I think these Psalms are a gift.
I think a lot of the times when the author uses those words like, why should I fear in this situation, or
Yeah.
what can man do to me? I'm pretty much 100% sure he's not saying that because he doesn't fear.
Yeah.
He's saying that because he does fear,
Yeah.
and he's questioning, why should I fear?
Yeah, he's talking to himself.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, and I think a lot of times it helps just acknowledge the fears you do have, and you go, well, why should I fear? Like,
Yeah.
look what God has done for me in the past.
Yeah.
Look what God is continuing to do. Why should I be afraid? And it's not because he's perfect and doesn't fear.
Yeah.
He's just acknowledging who God is in those moments.
If we would, in our fearful moments, take a little bit of time to do an inventory of all the times in your life that God has seen you through, all the good things that he's done, all that he's cared for you, that fear, by the time you're done that process, would probably have floated away quite a bit, and you'd be like, oh yeah, what was I being afraid of? But we got to do that process. Martha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 And that's a picture that the Psalms give often, right? Is the fortress, right? Like this, we don't have fortresses in Canada, hardly at all. We have like Lower Fort Garry. But if you go to England or something, you've got like these real fortresses. Like they're massive stone, buildings that you just, like you could have a hurricane. These things aren't going anywhere. And that's the picture. Psalm 91 is he's our fortress. And yeah, what am I afraid of a hurricane for if I'm in a fortress? If I'm in a tent, yeah, I got lots to be afraid of. But we're not in a tent. Mm-hmm.
Usually not that height. I got 3/4 of the way up, and the handholds were some of the tougher ones, so they were kind of further spaced out. I had to sit and think what my breath would be, and I started looking around, and I started to actually use it.
Yeah.
My heart was starting to race, and I was starting to get scared. I had the rope,
Yeah.
safety rope and everything, and I says, I can do this, focus, focus, focus. Just focus what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I thought, it just reminded me that, yeah, well, all of a sudden, you can just all of a sudden lose it.
Sure.
And I still had a rope,
Yeah.
still there. I mean, if you want to use it,
Yeah.
biblical term, but
And,
you can focus.
and we've all lost it in our spiritual life at some point where we all of a sudden are freaking out about whatever circumstance is going on in our life. And oh my goodness, how are we going to do this? And yeah, we've lost sight of, yeah, there actually is a real strong rope holding me up. I don't need to be afraid. Good. Kids are coming back. We will leave it there, and I guess we only did one today, but that's good. So next Sunday, we'll do a share in prayer Sunday, and then we'll get back to Psalms in 2 weeks. That's it. Thanks.